Hi everybody and welcome back to my War Games hobby channel. Alec here. Me and Graham, who's behind me, look there he is, wave Graham. We're just about to have a game of Muskets and Tomahawks, which as you know I like very much. I've been playing them for a long time. But we're going to do something slightly different tonight and we're not sure how it's going to work out. And the difference is we're going to introduce some house rules. Because as much as I like the rules, there's a couple of things I think that can be improved upon and to make it easier for everyone to understand, which I'll explain what that is. But before I explain what the new house rules are, let me show you what the game is. This is an American War of Independence game and I'm playing the Americans. I've got 2 units of riflemen here. I've got 2 units of militia. That's 12 men per unit, and a unit of Continentals, which have been upgraded to Post Valley Forge, so they're very good, they're regulars. Graham over here has got 2 units of British infantry, one of which are grenadiers, they're elites, with an officer. I've got a unit of light infantry skirmishers on the hill, and they've got a unit of provincials, which are these, and another unit of provincial light infantry, which are scouts as well. So it's not a massive game, and the idea being, as you'll notice I've got some deployment points here, and Graham has to try and capture those deployment points. There's a deployment point under this figure here. If he captures those, and he captures all 3 of them, he's won the game. What I've got to try and do is to get off the other edge of the table, all the way over there. Yeah, oh, there's 4 objective markers there, and if I leave the table at those points within 6 inches of them, I gain a bonus for those units. And if I should get a unit off that's not lost any men, I get double bubble for that, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have a bit of a fight in the middle, which is what usually happens, but at least we have got those objectives to take into account if it turns out that we can achieve either of them, which, as I say, is probably a bit doubtful. Right, so the amendments or the house rules we're going to use, there's 2 groups really. The first one is melee. I've always felt, and I know Graham agrees with me, that if a unit is shaken, it doesn't fight at any disadvantage in a melee. And that to me always seemed a bit odd, that should be the case. So what we're doing for tonight is that if a unit is shaken and is attacked by an enemy unit, it actually fights at a slight disadvantage. So instead of, for example, hitting on 6s, 6+, they'll only hit on 7+. So there's a slight disadvantage because they're a shaken unit. The second thing is that if you go into an attack and you're loaded, you're ready to fire, you get a bonus for going into that attack as well. So instead, if you're going into an attack and you're hitting on 6s, in fact, now you hit on 5+ instead of 6+. So that's an advantage as well. So a loaded unit charging a shaken unit will have a quite a nice little bonus. It'll have a bonus itself, and the shaken unit will have a minus. We just feel that that would be worth trying out. Incidentally, you only get that bonus for being loaded for the first melee, because after that you get an out of ammo marker anyway, as is normal, and you won't be able to use that again until you've loaded again. So that's the easy one. The next one is a little bit more complex, because whenever we see anyone playing Muskets and Tomahawks, they all do something slightly different with regards to close order troops. Now at the moment, as the rules go, this unit here, which are 2 units of British infantry, they're in close order formation, can only fire straight ahead. They can't fire a unit, for example, over here, because they're not in their arc of fire. So for this game we're changing it, that if they wish to fire over here, as long as it's a 45-degree angle, which then that one would be, they can, but only the front rank fires, not both ranks, because they're getting in each other's way a little bit. In fact, that seems to be a standard in most war games rules I've played over many, many years, most lines of infantry tend to have a degree that they can fire on, an angle, and we're doing it 45 degrees. But as I say, only the front rank fires. Now, the advantage with that is that it's obviously still in formation and gets +2 for morale. And the other advantage is only half the unit's fired, so it doesn't get an out-of-hand marker. So that's really quite useful. If, however, this unit was over here, then it can either fire normally with all the figures in the unit. If that was one big unit of 16, for example, they could all fire that, or they could do volley fire, because that's straight ahead. That's not going to change. Just the main difference is over here, at the moment you can't fire on those, the way the rules are, but we're going to make it that you can, but only front rank fires. And that's the same with any unit that is not in skirmish formation. So, for example, my militia here, at the moment, they can all fire straight ahead, they can do normal fire. They can't do volley fire anyway, because in the American War of Independence supplement, militia can't go into close order, so they can't do volley fire. They weren't trained to at that period. They were by the Napoleonic Wars. You'll notice in the Shakos and Bayonets book, militia can go into close order, therefore they can do volley fire. But in this war, they weren't trained to do it. Well, you can upgrade, in fact, American militia to be better quality, then they can go into close order. But the basic cost of a normal militia unit, you can't do that. So they have the same thing. If they want to fire over here at 45 degrees, if a unit was in these rocks, they could do, but only the front rank will fire, because the rest of the people are getting in their way. The only other thing to mention is skirmish troops. They can fire, of course, anywhere on their frontage, so they don't have that limitation. And they all fire, they're not getting in each other's way, they're spread out a little bit more. And I think, the only other thing we're going to introduce in this game is that extended order can only be used by scouts, troops with the scout trait, in other words, light infantry, because they were trained to be using the terrain to their advantage, to keep well spread out. Even if a unit of this, if these 12 militia get knocked down to just 4 men, for example, they still can't go in extended order because they weren't trained to. It's as simple as that. So we're going to reduce the amount of troops that can use the extended order advantage to just troops that were trained to do so. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Now, it'll be interesting to see how we get on. I'm not going to record the whole game. I shall record bits where I think it's relevant, where you'd be interested to know what's going to be going on. And also every so often I'll come and give you an update of what we're doing, because that's how I do my games. Unlike Graham, whose YouTube account is called Graham's War Games Vault.
Correct, yeah.
Concentrates primarily on Saga, because Graham's our Saga expert at this club, and although he denies he's an expert, he really is. He knows what he's doing. Now, if you go to Graham's website, if you want to learn how to play Saga, then go and have a look, because he covers it in great detail, and he does whole games, although he does edit them down to about an hour average, Graham?
Hour and 5.
Yeah. So do that. If you want to learn how to play Saga, then go and have a look at Graham's War Games Vault and look through the games, and he'll teach you how to play. Now, I don't do the whole game, I just do highlights, which is what I'm going to do again. But as I say, if we think there's something happening that is of interest, then we'll start the video again. Right, so we're going to do our first moves, and we'll report back later. Right, see you soon. Quick update. It's all happening over here.
Yeah.
You'll notice that Graham, let's just put this down. I'll explain what's happened here. I had my rifles were in the wood. They opened fire on the loyalists, and they took 3 casualties and had to fall back. They've since recovered, but they haven't done anything else. But Graham's light infantry moved up twice here. In fact, the second time they charged my unit that was on the right of the wood. We had a melee, and because he had a loaded weapon, he gained a slight advantage. He was hitting on 6s, and I was hitting on 7s. But the end result was we both lost a figure each, You'll notice now he's now also therefore unloaded. He has to reload before we can fire them. I've still got the 2 because they were rifles. They're going to take 2 turns to reload those anyway. And I've had to fall back because my morale...
And Alex rolled exceptionally well, rolling a 7, rolling high, and he still survives.
Well, it's skirmishes, they don't like combat.
Well, rolling a 7 is nice, Alex.
So I've fallen back. They're not shaking or anything, they've just had to fall back. Because Graham hasn't had to do a test because I'm not there anymore. And he's happy with that.
I'd rather have beaten you to a pulp.
So it's at the moment, it's the Americans are winning. We've killed 4 enemy. They've only killed 1, but he has pushed me back in the wood. Right, but the interesting thing over here is that my Continentals were manoeuvring to try and get onto the flank of these guys. But then I unfortunately I had to give Graham a regulars card, and he's now moved up over on the hill here with the Grenadiers, ready to do volley fire on me. But the other interesting thing was this unit, I was here a few minutes ago, but he fired on me with just the front rank.
The point of interest there, Alex, is that because I am not directly into the front, but I'm less than 45 degrees, I could fire, but only with the front rank.
Yes.
So I fired with the front rank.
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to roll 2 hits, and Alex was very unfortunate enough to roll 2 dead. So Alex then rolled a morale test, which you did a recoil on the unit.
Well, we did the officer first.
Officer first. As discussed, you should always test the officer first. And unfortunately, the officer, he rolled a 0. And he's on his toes.
So he ran away. Now, we're also, I don't think this is in the rules, we're also now saying that if an officer is fleeing, he obviously can't count as a morale booster for that unit, which has now forced these to fall back as well. So it's gone all a bit difficult for the Americans, which Graham's very happy about. But we're happy the way it's working out. We do think officers, in the past, we've not done them properly. An officer should always test first. If a unit it is with has to test, the officer has to test first to see if he loses his will to stay there, which is exactly what's happened. I've run off. And he's still within 6 inches, but we feel, again, I'll have to check the rules, but we feel if an officer is fleeing, he can't get that bonus. The unit don't get a +1 bonus for having us within 6 inches because he's running away. Graham says I have to do an update. The reason is that he fired volley fire over here. I've been falling back here in a bit of disarray, but he got near enough to me to do volley fire again, and he killed 3 men? 3 men.
Which is the magic number.
First of all, we diced for my officer, and he decided to flee. Let's just put that for now. He decided to flee, which meant, as we're now counting, officers don't count towards the morale if the unit has to do a morale and roll badly, and of course they did. I rolled a 0. Right. Oh, basically you ended up on -1. They've routed off the field now. They've gone. And as that's the only officer with that unit, there's no other regulars in the battlefield. He's gone as well, because we don't allow officers to stay on the battlefield once their unit's been destroyed. So my best unit on the table has gone. And Graham is a happy bunny, aren't you? His other regulars are in the wood now, shooting on my militia, but the only good thing was when he did shoot, he missed completely.
Yeah.
And over here, there's not much happening because all the action's been on the other side. So at the moment, Graham's got a huge advantage, and I've got to do something here with my rubbishy militia. I've only actually moved, this unit's moved twice, and that unit has only moved once.
But they can't volley fire, can they?
And they can't volley fire anyway because they're militia. This time period, militia didn't volley fire because they can't go into close order. So it's looking very positive for Graham at the moment. Quick update, Graham is pushing me back here. He's coming round with that unit. I've got 2 more casualties on him, so he's not very happy, but my skirmishers have just got to shoot him off. They've got rifles. They're still unloaded, as you can see. So I've got to try and stop him by musket fire. No point in trying to go in there into melee. Over here, no good me trying to shoot him in the wood. He's in extended order. He's got dense cover. I'd be in what we call an impossible shot. So I'm sending my militia up to see if I can engage him into combat. Over here, I've got militia. They've only lost one man. They were shaken, but they've recovered. But they've got 2 regular units coming up, looking a bit dangerous. Although they are out of ammo at the moment, so I'm not too worried about that yet. So yeah, it's looking good. But I'm being pushed into this corner, as you can see. And Graham's very happy at the moment. Report back later. Okay, so the game is over. I've decided to call it because I can't win. Graham managed to here. There we go. They've captured the point that was there, the objective. He hasn't got anywhere near the other 2, which are here and over there, and he has lost his provincials that were over there. They've gone now. They've disappeared. But these are my casualties, not these 2 here. These are mine. These are all my casualties, and they're Graham's casualties. But the fact is, he's got an objective, and I haven't got anywhere near getting off his table edge. Look, the nearest unit I've got are these militia, which are just about to charge into there. But even if they do, they're not going to be that successful, I don't think. Even if they push them back, they're not going to get off the table. Graham's got that point. All he's got to do really then is march over here to get that point, and there's not much I can stop him because this unit's outnumbered 3-1. So I've called it. It's a good game. Graham, well done.
Thank you very much.
And we only the house rules we tried. We didn't use them that many.
No, we did a little bit early game when we had the melee over here on this side, and when we were charging into melee, when you became unloaded and shaken. That was one thing. The other thing that we did was we fired single rank as well.
We did,
which I actually think worked well.
You did.
I quite like that.
Because you weren't unloaded then either, so you could just move forward and fire again.
We didn't see, one of the things, bones of contention that we've felt in the past is the extended order issue, and when it's not extended order. I actually like the fact that close formation troops cannot go into extended order, so we had none of that as well happening here today,
that worked well.
Which was a positive. And the other thing that we were focusing on a little bit more today in this game was the officers. We were working on the officers first, making sure they were tested first, and I think that actually made quite a big difference to the game.
It did to me, because my officers, I rolled badly with them, and they started fleeing, and of course that meant my units had no officer nearby.
Yeah, well, I rolled bad with my officers as well, but I do think that affected morale rolls. And also we said that if you were flighting, you couldn't assist with the +1.
Yeah, which is, I think, is a good point.
Which is, I think, is a good thing. We also said if they were shaken, could you assist?
No, it's a shaken. You could assist with that because they weren't fleeing. They're still there. They're just not very happy.
Yeah, but no, I thought the rule amendments were good, and I think they would be well worth persisting with. I think.
I think we'll try another game, but the officer thing is important because we were making sure that when the officer was nearby a unit that took casualties, it had to test first to see whether he lost his nerve or not. But yeah, I think it was a good game, and those house rules that we've tried, they all seem to work okay, and we'll do the game again next time we play. Use those house rules and see. Maybe we should try it for the Napoleonic period, because the militia there can still go in close order, so that won't come into it really.
And finally, thank you very much, Alex, for setting the game up and hosting.
Good fun, and well done, Graham, for winning.
I would say a slight winning draw, but that's about it. But thank you again.
Right, okay, guys, that's it. We'll see you again soon. Hi, everyone. Just a little recap on the game you've just seen between me and Graham. We wanted to introduce some house rules to make the game run a little bit smoother. And there are a couple of things that certainly I have not been happy with that I think can be improved upon. This is only a trial at the moment. We don't know whether we're going to keep them or not, but we're going to have several games to see whether they work out. First of all, the easy one, the melee house rules. I've always felt that shaken units should be penalised for being shaken if they get charged. I've also always felt that if you charge into a unit and you're loaded, especially against a unit that isn't, then you should have another advantage. You can imagine, you know, if you were 6 guys with muskets and you saw 6 enemy and you charged them, when you get pretty close, point blank range, you're going to unload your weapon towards them and hopefully do a lot of damage with them. And I think that just isn't reflected in the rules at the moment, so I'd like to see that happen. Certainly that's why we're trying it, to see whether it does work or not. Now, we did a -1 for units that are shaken on the melee table, and we did a +1 if you're loaded. On reflection, I don't think that's enough, because most other rules, if disordered units or shaken units get in combat, even on a D6 they get a -1, but we're talking about D10s now, so I think it needs to be at least double that. I think shaken units should get -2, and if you're loaded, if your weapon is loaded when you charge in, you should get a +2. Well, we're going to try that anyway. The +1 and the -1 didn't make that much difference, to be honest. It's not a big advantage. Of course, the other way you could handle it is if you charge in with a loaded weapon, you could get 2 attacks per figure. But that might be a little bit too much, a little bit too far. So we're going to try the +2 first, and we'll try the -2 on shaken as well. So it really makes a shaken unit, especially if it's been charged by someone that's loaded, they're in a bit of trouble. So we're going to try that anyway and see what happens. With regard to all the other bits that we're doing, the close order units, that when they go into close order is quite straightforward, but of course when they're not in close order, when they've either been fleeing or they've just had a combat, you can't be in close order formation after combat or after fleeing. You have to go back into close formation again. So there isn't a word that the rules use for units that are in that state. I'm suggesting we call them unformed, because that you know, is pretty clear what that means. In the American Civil War period and the French and Canadian Wars, militia weren't trained for volley fire, and in the rules it reflects that. Unless you upgrade the unit, normal militia don't count as close order troops, but you can, like the Americans for example, you can upgrade them to be close order troops. There are quite a lot of points to do that, but then of course they can go into close order. But really, if they're not been upgraded, they shouldn't ever be in close order. They don't get the +2 bonus for being in close order, and they can't do volley fire, and that's fairly straightforward. But that they will therefore remain unformed throughout the whole game. They never can form up into close order. And when we talk about close order, we do mean shoulder to shoulder. They just weren't trained to do that. By the Napoleonic Wars, of course, they were, and you'll notice in the Chacots and Bayonets book, all militia, all troop types are close order, unless they're skirmish type troops, light troops, which then go in extended order. Now, to move on to the extended order, we just feel there's a bit of confusion, or a lot of people interpret it different ways. Some light troops are in open order, but they're not in extended order and so on, and there has to be a distance between of a minimum of 1 inch. It's not clear whether it's between the base or the figure, and we've just felt it's a bit messy, and it is unnecessary. If troops have the skirmish trait, and that's all light troops, or light troops where it's not mentioned that they've got the skirmish trait, if you look in the rules, it does say light troops can then choose to be either close order or with the scout trait. If they've got the scout trait, then they can go into extended order, and any troops that are in that order will stay in that order. There'd be no reason why they wouldn't be. So all light troops, skirmish troops, as long as they've got the scout trait, are automatically in our games now going to be declared as in extended order. But they're the only troop types that can do that, because close order units, when they get down to small numbers, weren't trained to go into that formation, and they shouldn't get an advantage. They just stay unformed, not in extended order. And the same with militia. Militia stay unformed. They can't go into close order because they're not close order troops, and they can't go into extended order because they're not trained to. That we feel works really well. In fact, we have tried that, and it seems to be pretty acceptable to most people. But we're still putting it on trial. I'll get back to you when we've had a lot more games to see how it all goes. And of course, in the rules it does say you can get blocked by friends, and it always takes ages to declare or to find out which figures are blocked, which ones are not. There's always a bit of an argument. No, he can't see, but he can. It's messy. So it's a lot easier if we just say all units, if they want to fire other than straight ahead, if they want to fire at 45-degree angle at a unit that's come within range, they can do, but only the front rank fires. It's so much easier to do that. That means that only half the unit is fired, but it means they don't get an out of ammo order. They don't get an out of ammo marker anyway. So it's good. It works, seems to work well. We've had a few games. The last game you just saw, Graham used it to great effect against my Continentals. He only fired the front rank, only 4 men, killed 2. They actually did come off the unit, and then I rolled a bad morale test anyway, and I went. So the whole thing works a lot easier if you just do front rank firing, none of this blocking thing. And also, incidentally, skirmishers never get blocked by friends, or troops in extended order never get blocked by friends. The last thing I wanted to talk about was officers, because we found in a lot of games that it's only the officers that are surviving and everyone else dies, and that shouldn't be the case. Officers can be hit, and they should be able to be hit. They can't be targeted if they're within 6 inches of a friendly unit anyway, of its troop type. And they would really want to be further away anyway, but that is fine. But if they are within 6 inches and that unit takes casualties, there has to be a chance that the officer's hit. Because of course officers were targeted often, the snipers would try and take them out. So we've made a few changes to the officers. We haven't tried this yet. We're going to try it in the next game. So officers within 6 inches of a unit taking a morale test must do so first. First of all, that's a part of the rules anyway, really. They should always, we've been forgetting to do that. We're going to make sure in future that they always test first to see if they pass or not. Because this could have a big detrimental effect on the unit itself when it rolls for morale. So when an officer within 6 inches of a unit benefiting from its size. Now the thing is, if you're going to dice for officers first, you've got to be able to get the benefit if the unit is a big unit that it's with, or if in fact it's gaining the formed up bonus as well. So it's not clear in the rules that the officers get that bonus, but we think they should. Otherwise, officers are likely to run away and a unit is going to maybe stand there, which again doesn't seem right. I think the officers should get those bonuses. So when an officer is within 6 inches of a unit benefiting from its size, that's +1 or +2, depending whether it's 6 or more or 10 or more, or being formed up, the officer also gains those benefits. It makes them a bit stronger for morale purposes, and so they should be. Units taking a morale test cannot gain, therefore, the +1 benefit of officers within 6. So if an officer does start to flee and it's still within 6 inches of a friend, that unit doesn't gain any benefit because he is running away, let's face it. Again, I don't think that's in the rules. We've never seen it, but it makes sense that if an officer is in flight, you cannot gain any benefit from him. And then I'd just go on to say, currently officers cannot be targeted for shooting if they're within 6 inches, which I've mentioned. But this does not make sense, in my opinion anyway, as officers should be able to be targeted. In fact, even picked off, which was not uncommon. So if a unit takes casualties and there's an officer within 6 inches of it, then Andy is in range and arc of fire. Obviously, if he's out of arc of fire, he can't be targeted anyway. But if he does take casualties and he is in the arc of fire and in range, he rolls a dice to see if he's hit. So if the unit takes a hit, roll a d10, and if the roll is lower than the total hits on the unit, the officer is hit. So I'll put 2 examples there. A unit takes 2 hits, d10 roll is a 1, then the officer is hit. Again, and if the officer takes 5 hits, a roll of 1, 2, 3 or 4 is a hit. Obviously, if it's a single hit, a roll of a 0 would be a hit. And then, of course, you do test roll to see the fact that he's been hit. That doesn't necessarily mean he's removed from play, because the bullet might ricochet off a bit of webbing, or it might, you know, just the bullet might be spent, and you still roll to see whether the damage done by that unit in a normal way. And the other one is that if an officer is in combat, at least one enemy figure must roll to see if he hits that officer or not. Maybe if two officers are involved in a melee, they fight each other, and that will be fun, wouldn't it? So they're the amendments that we're trying out at the club at the moment, and I just wanted to clarify that after we played the game back, because maybe I didn't make that clear on a couple of instances. So we're going to see how that works out, and in time I'll get back to you as to whether we're going to adapt those permanently, as to whether we adopt those permanently, or change them, or forget them entirely. We're just going to see how it goes. It'll be interesting to see from your feedback what you think as well. Okay guys, so that's it for me. Don't forget, if you like what you've seen, please like my video, share if you can as well. I'd really appreciate that, and obviously subscribe as well, and make sure that you're informed of any updates that I do or any new videos. Right, okay guys, see you again soon. Bye.